Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 And then we can chant this prayer for the Bhagavad-gita. Sartyam Arjuna Syado Kurvam Gita Amritam Dado Lokachayopakaraya Tasmai Krishnatmane Namaha. Sarvalakshmataji.
Okay, just sorry. To begin with, I offer my obeisances unto Lord Sri Krishna, who accepted the position of the chariot driver of Arjuna, just to distribute this ambrosia of the Gita for the benefit of all the three worlds.
Thank you. And with that, we'll start chapter 3. So chapter 1 was kind of setting the scene. Chapter 2, you could say, is the summary. The teacher just gives a quick overview of what he's going to speak about. That's what Krishna does in chapter 2. And then in one sense, you could say Bhagavad-gita really begins in chapter 3. So chapter 3 is a very interesting chapter. It has kind of a circular movement, but with each circle, it kind of goes a little deeper. So just like in a conch shell, it goes round and round and round. So it's a very similar approach. It kind of helps us understand karma yoga, or connecting with the Supreme through work. Okay? And the kind of thing, it starts with a question from Arjuna. So we can, I guess, first read the question and then we'll see where the question comes from. So Arjuna Vacha Jayasi Chet Karmanaste Mata Buddhir Janardana Tam Tatkim Karmanik Hore Mam Niyojayasi Keshava. Madhira Mataji?
Arjuna said, O Janardana, O Keshava, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare? If you think that intelligence is better than fruited work.
Thank you. So in the last section of chapter 2 that we read last week, there was a lot of Sthita Dhir Muni, equipoised sage, and Shanti, how to achieve peace, and keep all abominable work far distant. So Arjuna understood it all, kind of filtering it through his own mind, that you shouldn't fight. Because a Sthita Dhir Muni, a steady mind, is an equibalanced stage, he's not going around on a battlefield killing people. He's sitting and meditating. Shanti is all about peace. And abominable work is definitely, killing people. Of course, Krishna was talking about something else, but because Arjuna really doesn't want to fight, so all these things he understood as, okay, maybe this can be my hint. This can be my excuse that I don't need to fight. But because he's a very sincere student, that's why he asked this question. So if you think that intelligence or buddhi is better than fruitive work or karma, then why do you want me to fight? Why do you want me to kill my relatives? And then in answer, Krishna will explain this karma yoga. So that's why the whole chapter is centered around karma yoga. Karma yoga is better than jnana yoga, just kind of renouncing and cultivating knowledge. If you are not qualified for karma yoga, then practice karma kanda. So the difference between karma yoga and karma kanda is working, but with a view of connecting with the Supreme. Karma kanda is just working, following Vedic instructions for enjoyment. And then it goes back to, if you are qualified for jnana yoga, still practice karma yoga to set an example. Then he describes the difference between karma yoga and karma kanda, how karma yoga elevates. And the last section is all about lust, how to overcome lust, the main obstacle on the path of karma yoga. So you can see it kind of keeps coming back to karma yoga, whether you look at it from a lower perspective, karma kanda perspective, or you look at it from jnana, perspective, whatever way you look at it, it keeps coming back to karma yoga. That's why it said it's circular, but at the same time moving forward. That's how the chapter works. Now, Prabhupada in the purport, he says that Krishna consciousness shouldn't be misunderstood as inertia, like retirement from active life, practice of penance and austerity at the secluded place. So sometimes Krishna consciousness is misunderstood to be inertia. Okay, so this is what Arjuna is thinking, but he's a sincere student. So he places the matter before his master. He asks Krishna, is it really what you want me to do? So even though that's what he wants to do, but he's not, he doesn't want to cheat. So he asks Krishna. Now, what are the dangers of just kind of becoming inactive? And then we can go to your question, Leon. But first, let's just, what are the dangers of becoming inactive? What are the dangers of using Krishna consciousness not to do things?
The mind is, it's fickle and difficult to control. So if you haven't really reached a state of like Brahmabhuta, it's probably dangerous.
Very good. And this is exactly what Krishna will tell Arjuna in a few verses. Thank you. So that's one of the dangers. Anything else from anyone?
Your responsibility, you try to get out of your responsibility.
Yeah. So
say that you can't even maintain yourself if you don't go out to work. And
yeah, later on. I'm really glad you kind of read ahead. You need to maintain yourself, you need to work. Yeah, very good. Very good. So we can't just kind of give up work without proper qualification and without proper guidance from a spiritual master. Leon and Gunachuda Mataji, was there a question there, or did you just want to answer this?
No, I wanted to ask what actually is inertia.
And you don't do anything? Let's see, what's the dictionary definition of inertia? It's, I guess this is physics. This is in physics, a natural tendency of objects in motion to stay in motion and objects at rest to stay at rest. But that's the physics definition. Otherwise, it just means that you don't do anything. Inactivity. Yes?
you could get really fat as well if you don't move around. Sorry, I had to say that one.
Vaishnava Prabhu, do you have a good definition for inertia?
No, definition I agree,
Uh-huh.
but Krishna consciousness cannot be considered as inertia because
Yeah.
whatever we do, we are doing all the actions to please the lordships,
Yeah.
for the pleasure of the lordships. So we are constantly working towards it. It may seem as inertia, but it isn't inertia. It's very hard to please.
And I don't even think it seems as inertia because devotees tend to work quite hard for the most part.
Yes,
So here
absolutely.
Prabhupada kind of uses inertia for like akarma, but akarma in the sense of not working, not acting. As we go through this chapter 3 and then chapter 4, chapter 5, we'll understand the intricacies of action. So because Arjuna's big problem is, I don't want to create sinful reactions. So that means I shouldn't work, I shouldn't act, because reaction comes from action. But then as we go through the chapters, we'll understand that reaction doesn't come from action, but reaction comes from the motivation behind the action, the enjoying propensity behind the action. So that's why Krishna consciousness is not inertia. It doesn't mean you stop acting, but you stop acting for your own enjoyment. Okay. Is this okay, Leon? Or okay, I take it that it's okay.
That's good, thank you. Yeah, it's helpful.
So let's see Arjuna's further explaining his question. Vyamishreneva vakena buddhim mohayasiva me tadekam vada nishchitya yena shriyoham apnuyam. Anagasuri Prabhu?
My intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively which will be most beneficial for me.
Thank you. So what Krishna's been saying, it doesn't quite fit into Arjuna's mental framework. Because when Arjuna hears Shanti, peace, he thinks about not fighting. But at the same time, he also hears Krishna telling him to fight. So that's why he's feeling confused. But when Krishna speaks about Shanti, that's not about fighting or not fighting on a battlefield. It means attaining peace through connection with the Lord, connection with Krishna. Okay, and this is what Krishna will explain. So for Arjuna, there were only two options: either fight, and that's karma, both in the terms of acting and in terms of getting a reaction. So that creates bondage. So his one option is fight and create bondage for himself, or not fight, renounce, which is like jnana or buddhi. Jnana means knowledge, buddhi means intelligence, but then there is no bondage. And he can't do either. So either fighting and creating bondage for himself, or renouncing, cultivating knowledge, no bondage, but then he can't do that because he's a kshatriya. So that's why he doesn't know what to do. But actually, Krishna spoke on much more different levels than just two. So Krishna spoke about 4 things in chapter 2. So he spoke about Jnana Yoga, which is renounced inactivity, so not fighting. He spoke about Nishkam Karma Yoga, renounced activity, so one works, but he renounces the fruits of work. He's not attached to the fruits. So still acting, fighting, but not for enjoyment, but for liberation. So these two, Jnana and Nishkam Karma Yoga, are both detached, renounced. Jnana is detached inactivity, and Nishkam Karma Yoga is detached activity. Okay? Karma Kanda is attached activity. So fighting for earthly or heavenly enjoyment. If he wins, then he has an earthly kingdom to enjoy. If he loses, then he dies as a kshatriya, dying on the battlefield. He'll go to heaven and he can enjoy there. So what's common with Nishkam Karma Yoga and Karma Kanda, they both work. But Nishkam Karma Yoga is detached and Karma Kanda is attached. And then the 4th level is Vikarma, or sinful activity. It's activity, it's attached, and it's not even dharmic. Karma Kanda is activity and attached, but it's dharmic, it's following dharma. But Vikarma is activity attached and it's not following dharma. So giving up dharma, giving up his kshatriya duty, and getting papa or getting sin. So are these 4 different options clear? No, yes, a little bit. Any questions about this? Okay, I'll put up these slides so you can think about them later on, but it's quite important to understand all these different options, different levels, because Krishna will show how ultimately Nishkam Karma Yoga is the solution. Vaishnava Prabhu?
In the previous slide, you showed, if you go back to the previous slide, please, not this one. So if 17 to 24, if you're qualified for Jnana Yoga, still practice Karma Yoga. No, sorry. Let me go back. Okay, lost connection. Okay. if you're not qualified even for karma yoga, then you practice karma kanda.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I'm 10 to 16.
Yes.
So ideal is karma yoga. I mean, that is the answer.
Yeah.
But why karma kanda? And then in the next one, again, that difference is there. So I'm a little bit confused about
I
around
try to
that.
explain it. Hopefully it will become a little clearer. And then hopefully by the end of the chapter, it will be even clearer. So let's say karma yoga, that's the ideal. But it involves detachment. It involves giving up the fruits of your action. It involves not being attached to enjoying the fruits, enjoying the results. So if you're not qualified for that, if you're not able to do that because you don't have that purity of heart, that detachment, then at least do karma kanda, because with karma kanda you're working, but you're working for enjoyment, you're working with attachment, but at least you're following dharma, you're following Vedic scriptures, and that following of dharma, that following of the scriptures, which are Krishna's words, that will purify you, that will elevate you, so you can gradually become detached. So when somebody is doing sacrifices to, oh, it's okay. Okay, I won't continue because we'll go into more detail later. So is this okay, Prabhu? Then, okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. So options 2, 3, and 4, Nishkam Karma Yoga, Karma Kanda, Vikarma, they all recommend activity. The only thing that says inactivity is Jnana Yoga. But the activity of 2, 3, and 4 have different consciousness, different motivation. So all three act. Nishkam Karma Yoga acts in a detached way. Karma Kanda acts with attachment, but following Dharma. And Vikarma acts with attachment, not following Dharma. Okay? Now, Arjuna's thinking is that working, karma, and knowledge, jnana, are incompatible. So either you work, and then that means attachment, or you have enough knowledge and enough renunciation that you don't work, that's detachment. So attachment and detachment are not compatible. And as we go through the chapter, we will understand that actually Nishkam Karma Yoga includes both working and detachment. So karma is the working part, and Nishkama is the detachment part. So it includes both karma and jnana, or work and knowledge. Anagasuri Prabhu, did you have a question or something you wanted to?
Hare Krishna, yeah, I wanted to ask what the difference was between karma yoga and bhakti yoga. But I think I might know here because it says nishkama yoga means that you want liberation, whereas bhakti yoga, you don't want liberation, you just want to develop love for
Yeah,
Krishna.
that's the kind of slight, there's a slight difference. Also, sometimes Prabhupada uses it interchangeably, but Nishkam Karma Yoga technically is just working with detachment for the Supreme. But whether that Supreme is liberation or Brahman or Super Soul or Krishna, that's not really kind of definite. But in Bhakti Yoga, you work with detachment for the pleasure of Krishna. So that's like a slight difference. In chapter 9, we'll see some verses that explain this kind of little difference between Nishkam Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. So Nishkam Karma Yoga there explained that whatever, there's this verse, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, do it as an offering to me. So there it is like, whatever you already do, offer to me. And then the next verse is this Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam Yomi Bhaktya Prayachati. So offer me with love and devotion. So that means that the love and devotion is there, you offer what Krishna wants. So that's like the slight difference. But Prabhupada quite often uses it interchangeably. Is this okay?
Could I add on to that or ask a question on top of that? So if you're not really familiar with bhakti and or even the idea of offering the fruits of your work for the Supreme, I mean, essentially you could practice karma yoga but is that going to give you like punya, like good results, or would you still be able to transcend karma if you're like you work, but you're detached, you're a good person, you go to work, you try to help people, but does it have to have that offering piece to it to make it transcend the modes?
Okay, so for it to actually transcend, there needs to be a yoga, the yoga bit that helps you transcend, and there needs to be that connection with the Supreme.
Okay,
So
perfect.
just offering the fruits of your work in charity, that's more in the Karma Kanda section. But Prabhupada says that act of offering your work in charity, meaning that you don't want to enjoy it yourself, you kind of offering it for a greater good, it's a step in that right direction.
Okay. Is that like more like you get good merits, so it's good karma, so
It's partly, it's good karma, but good karma, bad karma still keeps you in the material
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
At the same time, we can't just say that, a serial murderer is the same as a philanthropist who gives their life to helping people. And in Bhakti Vaibhav, which is the next course, we're just studying Canto 2, Chapter 2, Chapter 3. And there Prabhupada explains that this kind of philanthropy, kind of helping people, working for your community, society, helping others, that's a kind of step in this direction of working for something greater. And eventually it will lead one to this working for something greater. And what's the greatest? The greatest is God. So gradually one will come to this point of what's the best thing to work for.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this is just for some background, so we understand what's going on here in chapter 2. Okay, let's go on. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Lokesmin Dvividanishta Pura Prokta Mayanaga Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam Karma Yogena Yoginam. Elaine, very good to see you after your travels.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O sinless Arjuna, I have already explained that there are two classes of men who try to realize the self. Some are inclined to understand it by empirical philosophical speculation, and others by devotional service.
Thank you. So this is Krishna's answer, at least the start of Krishna's answer. So these instructions of some recommending work, some recommending renunciation, some recommending karma, some recommending jnana, they are not contradictory, but they are multi-level. Why do we need multi-level instructions? Why is it not? The easiest thing would be everybody just do the same thing, black and white, everybody does that. Aline?
Because we're all on different levels. And that means not only the bhakti devotees, everybody. So that's why.
Everybody can be included, yeah. So we are all on different levels, and Krishna kind of allows for that. In the Vedic scripture, there's kind of different entry points are allowed for people to kind of enter on this path towards him. Whether we are very far away or very close to him, we can all enter that path. And Prabhupada in the purport, he makes a very kind of important statement. It's quoted quite often. He says, religion without philosophy is sentiment or sometimes fanaticism, while philosophy without religion is mental speculation. So you need both. Just like the two yogas, karma yoga and jnana yoga, or working and knowledge are both necessary. Because if you just work but you don't know who you're working for, then that's not really devotional service. And if you only have the knowledge, you know 2,000 shlokas from, I don't know, Srimad Bhagavatam, but you don't do anything about it, again, that's not devotional service. So you need both the karma yoga and the jnana yoga. You need both the work and the knowledge. And then roughly Religion could be said that that's the work or the rituals, the practices, and then philosophy is the kind of jnana, the knowledge, the understanding. But you need both. You need religion without philosophy. It's just sentimentalism, fanaticism. That's why sometimes people don't understand their own scriptures, and then they decide that if I kill everybody who's not the same religion as me, then that's my greatest service to God. That's fanaticism. And then even, even if they don't go around killing people, but looking down on people, if you are not the same religion as me, then you're not as good as me. Or even among devotees, sometimes devotees say, if your guru is different from my guru, then you're not as good as me because my guru is the best, meaning I'm the best. So everybody else who has a different guru is not as good as me. So all these are just different levels of this same idea. And then while philosophy without religion is mental speculation. So that's just, somebody sitting in an armchair reading loads of books and kind of intellectually enjoying the kind of reading and debating and discussing, but not actually doing anything about it. So the point is that you need both. So if you only have the rituals of a religion without the background understanding, then that doesn't really do much good. And then the other way also, so if you have a lot of knowledge, but you don't do anything about it. And then if we have morning program, for example, that's why both are included. So we have chanting, we have kirtan, which is the practice, and then you have the Srimad Bhagavatam class or Bhagavad-gita class, which is the philosophy. So we understand why we do things. So both are, both need to be there. Now, Krishna is just starting to give his answer. He says there are two classes of men who try to realize the self. So he speaks about karma yoga and jnana yoga. Some inclined to understand it by empirical, philosophical speculation. So that refers to jnana yoga. And then the other, in the verse it says karma yogena. The Prabhupada translates it as devotional service. So strictly speaking, karma yoga is not bhakti yoga, if you are very technical about it. But you'll see as we go along that Prabhupada quite often just gives the conclusion. Even in chapter 3, he gives the conclusion of chapter 18, Sarva dharmam parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. Because who knows if people will get to chapter 18. They might get confused if there's so many different yogas are mentioned. So Prabhupada quite often just conclusion. Karma yoga is bhakti yoga. Okay, so don't get kind of, oh, Prabhupada didn't know Sanskrit. He mistranslated things, he's got an agenda. He doesn't have an agenda, or his agenda is to kind of help us come to Krishna as quickly and as directly as possible. Okay, so that's why he says empirical philosophical speculation, which is jnana yoga and sankhya. And then karma yoga, he just translates it as devotional service. So that because Prabhupada wanted to make sure that the fundamentals are clear, so we don't get lost in the technicalities. There's this pastime in the Krishna book where Krishna goes to beg. Krishna sends his friends. His friends are saying they're hungry. So Krishna says there are these brahmanas nearby doing yagyas. So go and ask them for some food. Tell them that Krishna and Balaram are hungry. So the cowherd boys go, and the brahmanas just totally ignore them when they ask for food for Krishna. So they're supposed to be doing yagyas, offering everything for Vishnu. Idam Vishnave, idam namama. But when the origin of Vishnu comes and he says he's hungry, he wants food, then they just ignore him because they're lost in the technicalities. They're kind of lost in we are brahmanas and we are doing yagya. And then on the other hand, we have the story of the South Indian Brahmana who was illiterate, he couldn't read, but his guru taught him to read Bhagavad-gita every day. He was just following the instruction of his guru, and he was crying. And when Lord Chaitanya asked him why he's crying, he says, every time I look at Bhagavad-gita, I can't read it. I was told to read it, I can't read it, but when I look at it, I'm kind of thinking about how Krishna, God, is so kind that he became the chariot driver of his devotee, I'm just cry. And then Lord Chaitanya says, you understood the essence of the Bhagavad-gita. So that's why Prabhupada makes sure that we understand the essence and we don't get lost in the technicalities. Okay. And then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who also wrote commentaries on Bhagavad Gita, he says that the misunderstanding for Arjuna was that he thought that Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga, they are two paths leading to two different destinations. But actually, they can just be rungs on the ladder going up. Okay, so this is what Krishna will explain, that it's just part of a progression rather than two paths going in two different ways where you need to choose. Either I choose this path and go here, or choose that path and go there. Now, Krishna will explain what happens to someone who takes to renunciation prematurely before the heart is pure. So like Sita Sundari said, the mind, if it's not engaged, if it's not purified, it will take us on a terrible journey. So this is what Krishna will explain now. Na karma nama narambha na ishkarmyam purushosnute na cha sannyasana deva sitim samadhi gacchati. Sita Valabi Mataji?
Hare Krishna. Not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection.
Thank you. So again, it's not stopping work that will stop you from getting a reaction, but it's working without desires, working without selfish enjoying mentality that will stop the reaction. There are two levels. Jnana Yoga is higher. The yoga based on knowledge and renunciation is higher because it's not just external. It should be practiced once somebody's heart is purified enough to become renounced. But taking to Jnana Yoga, renunciation, too early without purification, that becomes a disturbance. So without purification of heart, sannyas or renunciation is simply a disturbance to the social order, and also to the individual, because they will be very frustrated and very disturbed. It won't help them on the path. And then just kind of changing the external, so for a sannyasi just to take on an orange cloth, that's not going to make someone renounced. The internal change is much more important, that the change of heart, whether the cloth is orange or white or any color of the rainbow, that doesn't really matter. It's what's inside, what's in the heart. Okay. And then in this verse, next few verses, Krishna explains that the soul is by nature active. So inactivity, not doing anything, is not an option. And since we are by nature active, then we should use this active nature for purification, for elevation, advancement, moving towards Krishna. And that's actually the purpose of all the prescribed duties, or the duties that are described in the Vedas. Nahi kaschit kshanam api jatu tishtati akarma krit karyate hyavashak karma sarva prakriti jairguna. Paramananda Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the qualities he has acquired from the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment.
And here Prabhupada says in the purport, it's not a question of embodied life, but it's the nature of the soul to be always active. So it's not that because we have a body that we need to work and we need to be active, it's because that's the nature of the soul. And actually, without the body, the soul is even more active. The body is like a burden, slowing us down. As you get older, you kind of notice it more and more. Things that used to take you half an hour may take you half a day now. So the body is actually a burden. The soul is very active and very energetic. And then if we act for purification, then there is no loss. Prabhupada gives this beautiful verse from the Bhagavatam, Tyaktva Swadharmam Charanam Bhujam Hare. So if somebody gives up his Swadharma, his occupational duties, to worship Krishna's lotus feet, then even if he doesn't attain perfection, there is no loss, because all his activities were for elevation, purification, and that's never lost. Okay? But if one renounces without purification, then he will find himself in difficulty. So renunciation is an option once somebody is purified enough, but if somebody renounces without being purified, then we'll see what happens. Karmendriyani samyamya asti manasasmaran indriyartam vimuthatma mityachara sa uchyate. Itu Prabhu?
One who restrains the senses of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender.
Thank you. So, outer renunciation with inner enjoyment, contemplation, is self-delusional. So you're deluding yourself, you're probably trying to delude others, maybe successfully for a while. But if somebody outwardly becomes renounced, puts on an orange saffron dress and pretends to be a sannyasi, but inside is always thinking about his sense enjoyment, that's delusion. That's a pretender. He's fooling himself, thinking that he's making advancement. He's fooling others for some prestige. And then that's the externals, and then the internal of meditating on the sense objects, the mind dwelling on the sense object, that also makes it difficult to control the senses. I don't know if you remember this verse from 2nd chapter, Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsa. Meditating, contemplating the sense objects, one develops attachment for them. So that makes it difficult to control it. Elaine and then Anagasuri Prabhu.
I find this verse actually a little confusing, because basically all of us who are not pure devotees, we are trying to restrain ourselves. We're trying to be bhaktas, but we are still not successful. So are we also pretending?
No. So the key word was the trying to kind of become detached. So everybody can have bad thoughts. Having the bad thoughts is not making you a pretender. What you do with the bad thoughts, whether you try to avoid them or whether you cherish them, that's what makes the difference. So that's why that verse I just quoted, Dhyayato Vishayam Pumsa, by contemplating the objects of the senses. So the sense objects are there, you're going to see them. Unless somebody's in solitary confinement, as long as you live in the world, you're going to see them. But what do you do with it? Do you contemplate it? Do you cherish it? Do you kind of bring up old memories of sense enjoyment? Or do you, okay, it's there, I don't need to deal with it, move on. Then one is not a pretender. So,
But
yeah.
may I say? But
Yeah.
I mean, what you're also what you're referring to is on a very high level. I mean, let me give you a practical thing that happened to me this week. That was my vacation with my husband. He's not a devotee. I mean, I know what I want to do, and I really want to be a good devotee, but I did enjoy being on the beach and eating well and all that. Even though I was chanting my rounds and I was doing, I was not eating anything I'm not supposed to, and so forth. But saying I see it, but I don't enjoy it, I'm not there yet. So that's why I'm asking.
So you're a grihasta, you're a householder. Part of your duty as a householder to kind of be in a family, do family things. So it's being a devotee doesn't mean that you suddenly become like a cold stone and you stop doing everything. but your overall kind of direction, the way where you're moving, where your mind is, the direction you're going is towards Krishna. So you said that you did all the right, you chanted your rounds, you didn't eat anything that was wrong. Krishna is still in the forefront of your mind, but you also had some ice cream and you had a nice time on the beach. It's not mutually exclusive. So nobody is expecting you to. If somebody who's a sannyasi would be going with a lady friend to the beach and have ice cream, people might start having questions, but you're not a sannyasi. And if you try to live as a sannyasi, that would be adharma for you. If a sannyasi try to live as a householder, that's adharma for them. So everybody lives, the way the ashram they are in. Does this answer your question? So renunciation is going to be different for different ashrams, different life stages, different countries even. Is that okay? Okay. There was someone else, I think.
Yeah, I had the same question. It's
Okay.
been on.
Okay, but then is it okay? And then Leon or Gunachuda?
I find that I have to renounce on a daily basis during japa,
Mhm.
the shuffling of the mind through old memories, not even necessarily of sense enjoyment, but just memories of stuff that I don't really need to remember ever again, but it likes to pop it all up.
Yeah. So this is the two things here. Let me just say that sometimes the mind is not attached to like what we would call enjoyable, like gulab jamuns. Sometimes the mind gets attached to some kind of suffering or remembering some trauma because that's where it feels comfortable, or that's where it feels it's a very kind of strange thing that it's a little bit like when children grow up in an abusive home. Then in a strange way that becomes comfortable for them, and then they quite often end up with an abusive partner because that's where they feel at home. So in the same way, sometimes we get used to even bad things and thinking about bad things and we become attached to that. So in the same way, we also need to kind of just be detached both from the good and bad. That was one thing. And the other thing I wanted to say in relation to your kind of chanting, which we all go through, all of us. So the first level is at least with your mouth, you say the holy names, with your ears, you try to hear it. So that's like one stage. Then the next stage is when the mind also becomes more and more engaged in hearing the holy name. So don't be too discouraged or negative if you are not completely there yet. If you are going, like I said before, if you're going in the right direction, memories come up. When you notice it, you're kind of, okay, this is not something I need to think about. Like you say, I need to practice this detachment and renunciation daily during japa. Is this okay?
Thank you.
Okay. So, okay. Just in this verse, so an important point is that Krishna is not condemning renunciation, but renunciation without purification. So when somebody tries to change the externals without the internals being changed. And Burijan Prabhu, he explains that Arjuna understood that his adhikar, his qualification, is for work, not for renunciation. And that should also be something quite reassuring for us. Arjuna is a pure devotee, eternal associate of Krishna, but he's a kshatriya, he's a grihastha, so his qualification is for work. So if we are also happen to be grihasthas working in the world, that's completely fine, as long as we kind of try to connect it with Krishna, think about Krishna, going towards Krishna. Okay? So the point here is not that everybody takes sannyas and it doesn't work. That's why there's the multi-level instructions. And to understand our eligibility or our qualification, our adhikar, we need the help of our gurus, our mentors, guides, friends, and then they can help us on this way. Okay. Yastvindriyani manasa niyamya rabhatirjuna karmendriya karma yogam asakta sa vishishyate. Vaishnava Prabhu?
On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is far superior.
Thank you. So regulation is more favorable, more conducive than renunciation. So especially if, like we said, we are active, we engage the senses in Krishna consciousness, that's preferable to just completely trying to stop the senses from working. Again, back to the first verse of Nectar of Instruction. How do we control the urges? By engaging them in Krishna consciousness, not trying to stop them altogether. There are two kinds of senses, 5 of each. One category is called Gyanandriyas, or knowledge acquiring senses. They are the eyes, nose, tongue, sense of touch, and ears. And there are the Karmendriyas, the working senses, the hands, legs, genitals, anus, and the tongue for speaking. Now the Gyanandriyas, the knowledge acquiring senses, they are active anyway, because unless you walk around with your eyes closed, you're going to see things. If you don't use earplugs, you're going to hear things. So these senses are active anyway. It's just the karmendriyas, the working senses, we need to kind of control what we do with them, what we don't do with them. So we see the gulab jamun, in one sense we can't really stop that happening, but do we go to the gulab jamun? Do we pick up the gulab jamun? Do we eat the gulab jamun? That's the question. And then the difference between just seeing the gulab jamun and walking away, or seeing the gulab jamun and eating it, is what happens in the mind. So when you see the gulab jamun, do you start contemplating the gulab jamun? Or do you say, oh, there's a gulab jamun, let's continue chanting my rounds? That's the difference. And then for the mind to be able to just kind of move on from the gulab jamun, we need knowledge, we need jnana, and that we get from studying the Shastra, studying the scriptures. We understand that that's the right thing to do, that's the best thing for me. And then Prabhupada in the purport, he speaks about a sincere sweeper in the street is far better than a charlatan meditator. So here we have the sincere street sweeper. I don't know if he's a charlatan or not, but I just found this picture. But the point is that it's not that we should try for inactivity. Better to do your work, even if it's maybe not a very prestigious work, or than artificially renouncing for prestige or to look good. Okay. So externals are not necessarily bad, sannyasis take sannyas because quite often it helps their preaching, but this should be there to help connection with Krishna, not for some external reasons, not for some prestige. Okay. Sorry. Let's get back to the street sweeper. Niyatam kuru karma tvam karma chayo karmana sharira yatra pichate na prasidyata karmana. Sita Sundari Mataji.
Perform your prescribed duty, for doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work.
Thank you. So this is another reason why we shouldn't just whimsically give up work, because we do need to eat, we do need to live, and unless we have a very sizable inheritance from somewhere, we need to work to be able to do these things. So working, doing our prescribed duties, that maintains social stability, maintains a somewhat peaceful environment. So far Krishna gave quite a few reasons for for working. So this is actually one of the reasons why, one of the questions in the Purva Svadhyaya. There will be another slide later on as well. So one of the reasons not to give up work is because it's unnatural. Like we said, the soul by nature is active. And also, giving up work doesn't lead to purification or liberation. It's giving up the attachment to the enjoyment that leads to purification and liberation, not giving up the work itself. Also, giving up work disrupts the social order. If this renunciation is done without purification, it's just pretension. Remember the charlatan meditator. And another reason is you can't even maintain the body without working. So all these different reasons are there not to give up work. So we all have to do our prescribed duties for maintaining ourselves, for purification, setting a good example, contributing to society, and just engaging our psychophysical nature. So this is our swadharma, this is the work we need to do. And for Arjuna, this happens to be fighting because he's a kshatriya. Now, Anagasuri Prabhu, yeah.
Hare Krishna. Maintain the body without work. Does that mean eating as well as doing something active with the body? Or is it both?
Both. So sometimes Krishna refers to the very basics, that you need to breathe, you need to eat, and in one sense that's also work. And then sometimes work refers to actually going to the office, or for Arjuna, fighting, or whatever one's work is, farming, which although that's kind of less and less now. So Arjuna asked about bondage. Remember, that was the question in the beginning. How Arjuna's thinking was that inactivity, not working, will free him from bondage, and activity will create bondage. It's quite an important question before a big battle where he will need to kill so many people, and that work doesn't get much worse or doesn't get much more entangling than killing others. So that's a very relevant question. So in the next verse, Krishna will explain the difference between ordinary work that entangles one and karma yoga that carries one to liberation. So the work is the same, but one kind of work entangles one, and the same work, but done in a different consciousness, actually liberates one from bondage. Yagyartat karma no nyatra lokoyam karma bandhana tadartam karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. Leon, Prabhu?
Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, as Nikunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction. In that way, you will always remain free from bondage.
Thank you. So, the nature of action is determined by its intent, not by its form. And the answer to this question of how do I work in a way that doesn't create bondage is yagya. So if one works with this mentality of yagya or sacrifice, then there is no bondage. So yagya, this is actually the first time Bhagavad-gita mentions yagya. Sacrifice, when we hear the word yagya, we might think of, fire yagya, when they're pouring ghee into the fire and putting grains in it and chanting mantras. And that's certainly yagya. But sacrifice or yagya, or in a broader term, or in a broader meaning, means anything that I could have enjoyed, I offer it to Krishna. So whether it's the ghee and the grains, or the money, or my time, or my energy, or my talents, even offering our food, the ice cream, before you eat it on the beach in Crete, you offer it to Krishna. So I still eat the ice cream, but I don't eat it right away. First, I offer it to Krishna. So that's the kind of secret of not getting entangled, not getting bondage from work, is this mood of yagya, sacrifice. And let's just take it with the bit where you pour the ghee and grains in the fire. So in one sense, it seems like that it's lost, it's all burnt up. But it's quite an intricate system. So whatever you put in the fire, it goes up to the demigods, and then they offer it to Vishnu. So, and it's not lost because you get this punya, this good reaction from it. And of course, if it's offered to Krishna, then it's devotional punya or bhakti that you get from it. So it's a little bit like when you put money in the bank. It seems like I have no money. I just give them all the money. I have no money. But we know that the money is there. You get a bit of plastic, and with that plastic, you can get the money, or you can pay with it. So it's a kind of similar idea. You put your ghee, your grains, or your time, or your energy, or whatever, sacrificing it, and then you get the benefit from it. And then the ultimate purpose of all sacrifice, and the ultimate purpose of varnashram itself, the whole doing your prescribed duty, is satisfying Vishnu. This is a verse Prabhupada often calls this varnashram acharavata purushena parakpuman Vishnur aradhyate. So that's the purpose of varnashram, that's the purpose of human life, even to satisfy Vishnu. And when one does that, then there is no reaction. Now this verse completes this section about how karma yoga is better than jnana yoga. And just to kind of summarize it so we understand the whole principle. So we know that ordinary work entangles one. But we just read that if you work with this yagya mentality, sacrifice mentality, then it liberates one. The same work, if it becomes karma yoga, yoga means connection. So if you connect your work, the results of your work to Krishna, the Supreme, it liberates you. If you look at the word Nishkam Karma Yoga, it includes everything. So karma means work. Nishkama means without desire or with detachment. And then yoga, the connection, means for Vishnu's pleasure. So everything is there in that one phrase, Nishkam Karma Yoga. So it already includes jnana. Arjuna doesn't need to worry about, should I do jnana yoga, should I do karma yoga? Because if you do Nishkam Karma Yoga, that already includes both the jnana and the karma and Vishnu, and it takes you up to the highest. Is this understandable? No? Yes? Okay. So then with that, we can go on to the next section. So what happens if you're not qualified for karma yoga because you're not detached enough? You can't just sacrifice the results of your work. You can't work with detachment. Then Krishna says, at least practice karma kanda. So okay, you work for enjoyment, but at least follow the Vedic instructions. Sahayagya praja srishtva purovacha prajapati anena prasavishyadvam isha vostva isha kamadhuk. Gunachuda Mataji.
In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods, along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, "Be thou happy by this yagya sacrifice, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation."
Okay, so the principle here is do this karma kanda, do your yagya so you can enjoy. But by following the process I set out, by following the process I set up, you're following me ultimately, and it will lead to your gradual elevation, detachment, and purification, and ultimately you can achieve me. Saying Krishna. Krishna says that. So Krishna created the universe, Krishna created the living entities and all the facilities for them. It didn't just cast them out into the wilderness. And one of the facilities that Krishna created is how to live in this world in a way that you can be gradually elevated, even if you are attached at the moment. So animals, they don't have this either facility or responsibility. So animals just act on their instinct, and also nothing is really expected of them. A tiger doesn't get bad reactions if it eats an antelope. But if a human being eats an antelope, then it gets bad reactions because he has a better facility, he has intelligence, but that comes with responsibility. Meaning he should understand that he shouldn't be eating antelopes. Okay, and then Prabhupada in the purport, as he does so often, whenever there is the word yagya or sacrifice comes up, Prabhupada most of the time in the purport mentions about Sankirtan yagya, congregational chanting of the holy name, which is the best yagya for this age. Okay, so this is always comes up. Because the ultimate purpose of yagya is to connect with Vishnu, connect with Krishna, and then the best thing for that is chanting the holy names with devotees. The next verses will explain how can karma kanda satisfy one's desires. Anyone wants to just remind us what karma kanda is?
No,
I didn't hear what you said, Gunachida.
I was just going to say that it's following religious principles, acting for enjoyment, not for it's still for elevation, but not for actually a sacrifice of Vishnu.
Yeah, so it's not even necessary for elevation, it's for enjoyment, but because it follows religious principles, that in itself helps one become elevated. So this will be explained, this whole kind of cycle of sacrifice. Devan bhavayatanena te deva bhavayantu va parasparam bhavayanta shreya paramavapsyata. Sarva Lakshmi Mataji.
Demigods, being pleased by sacrifices, will also please you, and thus, by cooperation between men and demigods, prosperity will reign for all.
Thank you. So it's a kind of cooperation. Human beings offer the sacrifice, ghee, grains, whatever they offer, and then the demigods supply air, rain, light, water, whatever we need. It's a little bit like you pay your taxes to the government. Government makes sure there is infrastructure for, plumbing. You get your water, you get your gas, companies are not supposed to charge you too much. There is police, looking after you, making sure there are no robbers running around on the streets. So this is the kind of idea of you give the demigods, you offer sacrifice, and then they look after you. Now, ultimately, all yagya is to please the Supreme Lord, to harmonize with him. And Sankirtan yagya is the most direct way for that. Most direct way to please the Supreme Lord, and then from that automatically the rains and everything else comes, because if we please Krishna, then it means we please all the parts of Krishna who are the demigods. So we don't need to do separate sacrifices to please the demigods. But some people, they don't have that faith in the Supreme, in Krishna, so they like to do different sacrifices for different demigods. In the second chapter of the second canto, there is a long description where Shukadev Goswami says, if you want a good marriage, you should worship this demigod. If you want health, you should worship that demigod. If you want stability in your position, you should worship the sky and the earth together. You should worship the horizon. So all the different things that somebody could want in their life, which demigod they should worship. But of course, if you worship Krishna, that's the next verse after that, then everything, all your desires will be fulfilled, and they will be fulfilled in a way that you don't carry on having material desires, but you become purified. Somebody, okay. And then Prabhupada in the purport, he also quotes this verse, Ahara Shuddho Sattva Shuddhi Sattva Shuddho Dhruva Smriti Smriti Lambe Sarva Grantinam Vipramoksha. And this is a process. So if you perform yagya, then your food becomes sanctified. So when we offer our food becomes sanctified. By eating sanctified food, one's existence becomes purified. By the purification of existence, finer tissues in the memory become sanctified. And when memory is sanctified, one can think of the path of liberation. And all these combined together lead to Krishna consciousness. So it helps one become elevated. Now, there's something else I want to speak in relation to this verse. Because this verse says, if you please the demigods with sacrifices, then you will get rains. Now, for us in this devotional sangha is no problem at all. But if you would go to some scientists or meteorologists, they would say no. Rain doesn't come from pleasing the demigods. It comes, when the precipitation happens and the wind blows in a certain way. That's where rain comes from. Now, these two things are not contradictory. So there isn't a contradiction between science and religion. It's just they're two different things. Science explains how something works, so the kind of dynamics of how something works, and religion explains the higher principles, why it works, who set it up, what's the purpose of it all. It's a little bit like when you look at, can you look at both these pictures? What's the difference?
There's a person in one of them.
Yeah. So science explains, how, the ball hits this ball, and then it will kind of move in this angle. And this is all true. But what science doesn't explain, that there is a person behind it who hit the ball in the first place. So the mechanics of precipitation and evaporation and all these things for happening for the rain, that's definitely there. But there is also a person behind it all who's controlling it all and making it happen. Okay, so that's why it's not contradictory. So there's nothing wrong with science as such, but science itself is value neutral. So it just explains how things move. But when materialists kidnap science to kind of come to this conclusion, we can explain how rain comes, so we don't need God. Or we can explain how this ball will move, so we don't need God. That's when it becomes wrong. So when we have science, a materialist will say, we can explain how the world works with the help of science, no need for God. But a religious person, spiritualist, when they see science, they say, science explains how the world works, which the world was created by God. According to the laws of God, God is wonderful. I think it was Newton, but I'm not 100% sure, who said, a little bit of science takes one away from God, and lots of science takes one closer, because you understand how amazing and how wonderful his creation, his laws are. Okay, so science itself is not bad. Okay.
Can I ask a related question, sort of? I've been reading chapter 15 for this month every day, and there's multiple times in there, both in purport and even in one of the verses, where it says, due to the moonshine, the vegetables are delicious, something along those lines. Now, scientifically, I've looked it up, because I understand like the sun and the rain, but I've never heard that and I'm not a big believer of science. I'm not trying to dispute that, but the problem is when we are teaching or, using the Bhagavad-gita, someone who is very science-based would look at that and say, well, that's ridiculous. And then, of course, they throw out everything because then it just looks silly. But is there some basis in that I'm totally missing? I'm not that good with science anyway, but I've tried to find some answer for that because he says it more than once. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. I remember hearing a class a few years ago where one of these kind of sciences devotees explained how it works with the moon. I don't remember all the details.
Okay.
One thing with the moon, which is also kind of fairly mainstream, is you know how the moon has phases when it kind of grows big and grows small. So quite often, if you plant things where the moon is growing, then it helps things grow. So a lot of people who do gardening, agriculture, they plant according to the moon phases. And then there are certain times to harvest things according to the moon phase.
Yeah.
Things will have different tastes depending on which moon phase you harvest it in. So that's fairly mainstream. I don't
Okay.
remember if this devotee kind of added some more to it about the taste.
Yeah. No, but that's good. That's perfect. I was like, I couldn't find any basis for it, and I thought, well, I don't know. I don't like to disagree on the basis of science generally with anything because I don't trust it. But yeah, so I worry more about when someone, if I'm reading with a group of people and I have to explain something, I'm like, you know, their minds think about things in a material and spiritual or a scientific way. So that helps. Thank you.
Anagasuri Prabhu, you got something there?
Hare Krishna.
Uh-huh.
This just made me think about nightshade vegetables, and I just did a quick AI. I don't know if that's bona fide, but it just said that they bloom at night. That's nightshade vegetables, which are like tomatoes, potatoes, aubergines, peppers. So yeah.
Okay, good. So we can have a gardening class going on at the same time. It's really exciting. Okay, let's see the next one. Vishtam bhoga hivo deva dasyante bhavita tardattana pradayayabhyo yo punkte stena eva saha. Aline?
In charge of various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied by the performance of yagya, sacrifice, will supply all necessities to you. But he who enjoys such gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief.
Thank you. So this continues explaining this whole principle of offering yagyas to the demigods. Now the demigods are not really dependent on our ghee and barley grains, but they dependent on the yagyas for honor. If you don't respect them, that's offensive. Now, this honor that we offer the demigods, or people offer to demigods, that's ultimately for the Supreme Lord, for Krishna. And if the demigods take it for themselves, then it becomes offensive on their side. And we know it from Krishna book, what happened to Indra when he got a bit carried away, thinking that the yagya is for him. And in general, you know, when we live our life, we inadvertently commit so much violence. So we walk around, we crush little bugs. When we drink water, we kill living entities that are in water. Same with cooking, lighting fire, sweeping. So all these different things, you can't live without violence. And this is also for Arjuna. Even if you retire to the forest and you refuse, you know, to kill in the battle, you still kill in the forest because you can't live without killing. If we don't even go as far as, you know, murdering carrots so you can eat, but even to breathe, to drink, you know, you're killing. And for most people, that means that you have to do this. Prabhupada calls this, or not just Prabhupada calls it, but that's the name of it, is Pancha Mahayagya. So 5 kinds of Mahayagya to kind of neutralize the violence, the inadvertent violence that we do. So when lighting fire, crushing grains, sweeping, drinking water, all these things create violence. And then this is how we can neutralize it. So Brahma Yagya means studying and teaching of scriptures. Deva Yagya, offering oblations. Deva means demigods. Oblations, Agnihotra, to the like yagyas for the demigods. Pitri means forefathers. Pitri Yagya means offerings to the forefathers. Manushya Yagya, Manushya means humans. That's where the word man comes from in English. In Hungary, there are a lot of gypsies, and the gypsies, they came from India. In gypsy language, Manush means a guy, a man. There's quite a lot of words that are similar to Sanskrit. So anyway, Manushya Yagya, human beings, feeding, giving shelter to humans, and Bhuta just means living entities in general. Bhuta Yagya means feeding other living entities. So these are the 5 types of yagyas that one needs to do to neutralize the effects of the violence that he inadvertently commits. But Prabhupada, as he always says, as a devotee, if you offer everything to Krishna, then you don't need to worry about separately doing Deva Yagya and Pitri Yagya and Manushya Yagya. And we also do it anyway, we feed people and try to look after everyone. We study, we don't disrespect the demigods, so that's already there. Leon or Gunachuda?
I apologise if this is a silly question, but what does the HU before humans actually, where does that come from? The HU, humans?
I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe something from Latin or Greek.
Okay, thank you.
You can look it up after the class. Okay, and then one more point in Prabhupada in his purport, he makes a very, very deep, very important point. So if somebody doesn't offer these yagyas, then he's like a thief and punished by the laws of nature. And he says, a society of thieves can never be happy because they have no aim in life. The gross materialist thieves have no ultimate goal in life. So unless you have an ultimate goal, a highest goal, then you won't be happy, because you get the bigger house and you may be happy for a few moments while you got it, but then you start thinking, yeah, but my neighbor has an even bigger one, and then you want an even bigger one and an even bigger one. So that's just a house. We could say gulab jamun, we could say car, we could say anything else, but none of these material temporary things will give ultimate satisfaction. So unless we have an ultimate goal in life, which is Krishna, we'll never be satisfied, we'll never be happy. Okay. Yagyashishtasana santo muchyante sarva kilbishai punjate te tvagam papam ye bhajantyatma karanat. Anagasuri Prabhu?
The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin.
Thank you. So we should see Krishna, God, not just as a provider of food, but also the enjoyer. So in all cultures, in all religions, there's some kind of acknowledgement of God before eating. Of course, we offer our food. Christians say grace. Jews also have some blessings they say for different foods. So in all religions, there is some acknowledgement that it comes from God. But we shouldn't just see him that it's coming from him. We should also see that he's the ultimate enjoyer. And then if we see him as the enjoyer rather than ourselves, then we don't become entangled. We don't get a reaction from it. And it's the same not just for food, it's the same for everything. If you don't just see that God gave me this nice house to enjoy or this nice wife to enjoy, but we see it, this is Krishna's energy, I should use it in Krishna's service. This is Krishna's devotee, I should serve them as such. Then we don't become entangled, because there is no enjoying mentality, but there is the sacrifice or yagya mentality. Now, of course, this as devotees, this is a very dear verse to us, offering our food to Krishna. And the best standard is that the food is grown, cooked, offered, served, and honored by devotees. but very few of us has that facility that we can grow all of our own food, and we don't depend on outside things, but at least offer it. So that's the least, even if you have to eat outside food. The best thing if you can at least cook it yourself, but in some situations that's not possible. So at least make sure there is nothing unofferable in it, and then offer it to Krishna. If you eat too much outside food, that can start affecting the consciousness. I'm sure you've all experienced that. So as much as possible, try to eat food cooked by Krishna. Vegetarian food in itself is not free from sinful reactions, because for so many of it you do have to kill the carrot or the potato. That's one thing. But also everything else, when it's transported, the truck will kill living entities. And then, so if you think about all the things that happen, there's so many karmic things are involved. The company that sells it uses the profits for unmentionable things or whatever. So it's not free from reactions, but it minimizes it. Vegetarian food, and then if we offer it to Krishna, that will free us from sinful reactions. And then Prabhupada in the purport speaks about how yagya has other forms as well. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Archanam. Anyone knows what these words mean?
Chanting, hearing, remembering, chanting. Is that right?
Yeah, so hearing, Shravanam, Kirtanam is chanting, Smaranam is remembering, and then Archanam is deity worship. Okay, but these are just some of the limbs of devotional service. So it's not just eating, but all these other limbs can also be used. Okay, and then like I said before, in one sense Krishna is giving a very gradual step-by-step process of how you can progress through karma kanda, karma yoga, jnana yoga, ultimately to bhakti yoga. But Prabhupada, Krishna's devotee, is often much more merciful than Krishna, so he just directly gives the conclusion: bhakti, 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 chanting the holy names. Don't worry about offering yagyas to the demigods. Okay, let's see the next one. This describes the cycle of sacrifice. Annat bhavanti bhutani parjanyadanna sambhava yagyat bhavati parjanyo yagya karma samudbhava. Paramananda Prabhu?
All living bodies subsist on food grains, which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by performance of yajna, sacrifice, and yajna is born of prescribed duties.
Thank you. So I made a slide just to show you this cycle. So living entities eat grains. The grains come from rains. Rains come from sacrifice, like we just learned. And where do we learn about the sacrifice? From the Vedas. And the living entities learn from the Vedas about sacrifice. From that comes rains, grains, like that. And then the living entities live on that. Same with pictures. It's very interesting. As far as I remember, Krishna's grandfather, Nanda Maharaj's father, is called Parjanya Maharaj. So Parjanya also means rain. So you can also remember Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. Okay. Now, Krishna is telling Arjuna here that even in the forest, even if you decide not to fight, you go away from the battlefield, you go to the forest, but even there you need to eat. And then where will your food come from? It comes from the demigods. So it means that you would be a debtor. You can't avoid your prescribed duty. There is no free lunch, as they say. You always have to pay for it somehow. Okay. And then, like the previous verse said, we offer our food and that purifies it. And it doesn't just, when we eat that offered food, prasadam, it doesn't just purify us, but it also kind of vaccinates us from future contamination. So it purifies past sinful reactions, and it protects us from future contamination. Okay, and then Prabhupada in the purport also speaks about how all food depends on rains. So even if somebody eats meat, if they eat, I don't know, let's not even talk about terrible things, but that animal that they eat grains or vegetables which grew from the rains. So whether somebody eats vegetables or meat, one way or the other, they depend on the rain. So everybody is dependent on the rain. Everybody is in this cycle. Karma brahmodbhavam vidhi brahmakshara samudbhavam tasmad brahma gatam brahma nityam yaki pratishtitam. Vaishnava Prabhu? Hitu Prabhu?
I can't see the English. Okay, now it's come. Regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas, and the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of God. Consequently, the all-pervading transcendence is eternally situated in the acts of sacrifice.
Thank you. So let me just quickly finish this verse, and then if Leon has a question. So this is connected to the previous verse, which described the cycle of sacrifice. So Krishna is both the source and the goal. So the source in the sense that anything we offer, the ghee and the grains and everything comes from him. And he's also the goal of sacrifice because we try to attain him. Okay, so that's why Krishna is the true object of worship. Even if it's through the demigods, ultimately it's through Krishna. And then if we connect with Krishna or the Supreme through Yajna, then that's a vertical relationship rather than horizontal relationship. So even relationship between a mother and child or parent and child, which is considered to be the most selfless in this world, that's also horizontal in this world, temporary, not perfect. But then if you have a vertical relationship with Krishna, then that's an eternal, perfect relationship. And this vertical relationship becomes possible through this yajna or sacrifice. Now it says that the all-pervading transcendence is eternally situated in acts of sacrifice. So you might ask, so if he's all-pervading, why do I need to do sacrifice? It's a little bit like this humidity in the air everywhere, but you can't drink the humidity. You need the actual water. So in the same way, transcendence or Krishna, even though he's all-pervading, he becomes accessible by this yajna. So just like water becomes accessible through precipitation, even though it's there in the humidity, yajna is the way for the transcendence to become accessible to us. Leon or Gunachudha?
Not that long ago, you said about memory. When you take prasadam, then your memory can be sanctified. So does that mean that things are being removed from your memory?
I don't think it's like brainwashing in the sense that things are removed from your memory, but you become more mode of goodness. So kind of lower kind of memories become less prominent, less interesting, and the memories of kirtan and the smell of incense and prasadam and association of devotees, that becomes more prominent. Memories, remembering the shlokas, the verses from Bhagavad-gita that we need to learn, that becomes more prominent than the songs you used to listen to or something like that. Is this okay?
Yeah, that's nice. Thank you.
So I finish here, unless somebody has something else.
Sorry, Mataji, when you said that, just reminded me when Prabhupada said about the brainwashing. We said, yes, we're washing the brains.
Yeah, it's just because it has a negative connotation. I don't want to kind of. We are cleaning our consciousness it doesn't have a negative connotation like brainwashing. So, yeah. So let's see, for homework, we have this thing. You need to use both verses from last chapter, chapter 2, and then this chapter. So based on Bhagavad-gita 2:54-68 and chapter 3:4-8, explain the general process of self-control by Krishna consciousness, with reference to verses, purports, analogies, and examples. So when a homework asks for verses, purports, analogies, and examples, then please make sure that you include at least one of each. Okay, so all of these. So this is the general process of self-control. Also explain how is it relevant to Arjuna's situation on the battlefield, and how is it relevant to your own practice of Krishna consciousness. Okay, is this okay? Is there anybody who's just really, where did we learn about this? I'm confused. I don't know what to say.
Would you mind putting it? I can't find it on the, I'm just behind in my, so I go to the classroom to check to see what, I don't think you've listed this yet, or I'm not
No,
finding
not
it.
this one. No, I've not listed this one. I'm just going to put this on now.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you very much. Very nice discussing Bhagavad-gita with you as always, and seeing your enthusiasm. It's very inspiring. Have a wonderful week, and then see you next Monday. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Sadhu Seva Sadhu Sangha ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Vanchaka Pariveshcha Pasanabheva Chabhatanam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.